is the single most important dragon in fiction? That question is surprisingly hard to answer. Shenron from Dragon Ball? Smaug from The Hobbit? Tiamat? These are all admittedly pretty good answers, but I think there's a really strong case that I want to make today for the spirit dragon of Magic the Gathering, Ugin, the silent observer. He who intervenes when the multiverse itself is at its greatest risk, and the twin brother of the greatest scourge, Bolas. Yeah, today we have a really long video, but a really exciting one. Let's settle in. Across the history of Magic the Gathering, very few characters have had a hand in as many world, or shall I say universe-shaping events as Magic Jesus here has. That's right, this dude is basically Magic Christ. He's one of the oldest beings in the entire multiverse, one of the original Elder Dragons born from the Dragon itself, the true master of colorless mana, founder of the mythical Ghostfire, the father of Tarkir's dragon broods, the single mind capable of imprisoning the plane-devouring Eldrazi, and ultimately, the architect of Nicol Bolas' final defeat, and now he's back in the story. And maybe the most surprising thing about him is that he stayed really humble while doing all of these things across many millennia. He's kinda sage-like, but also dragon-like, a dragon sage perchance. And really, we just need to dig deep into him because he is kinda the guy. Like, when it comes to main characters in Magic, there are like 3 guys technically, but Ugin, he's like the guy. Because without him, everything would have already crumbled centuries ago. And as we'll see, he's basically the total opposite of his twin, Nicol Bolas. That baddie boy spent his life conquering kingdoms, manipulating planes, eventually attempting to rule the entire multiverse itself as god, pharaoh, dragon, megalord basically. Meanwhile, Ugin read books probably and was real chill. He devoted his entire existence to understanding, well, existence itself. And he isn't driven by things like ambition, revenge, or glory. It's not about drive or power or staying hungry, it turns out. Ugin's sole goal is to preserve balance, protect reality itself, and really comprehend how everything works so he can guard and maintain it. But this philosophy, the desire to know how it all works, is the very identity of him in the game as well. In case you've wondered before, there's a reason that Ugin is the colorless Elder Dragon. And that's because he channels the primal forces transcending even the traditional ancient 5 colors of mana themselves. All colors of mana are at their roots still mana, and Ugin understands the basics of it better than anyone in the entire multiverse. And because, as we're gonna see, he's a maestro of pretty much everything, more often than not, he operates behind the scenes, quietly nudging history in the right direction that he believes will best preserve the universe. And he usually tends to start by letting events run their course until it's about to crash into a wall and cause very bad consequences to the order of the entire multiverse. So his character is far from being easy or clear-cut because his morals aren't wholly good outcomes every single time. Sometimes it means helping heroes like Jace Beleren. Sometimes it means making some impossible choices that leave entire worlds and universes to fend for themselves, like on Zendikar. And more often than not, it means arguing with people who simply refuse to listen, also mostly Jace. And ironically, for someone so devoted to protecting reality and life, Ugin spends much of his own story either dead, trying not to be dead anymore, imprisoned in some other plane, or desperately trying to stop others from being dead at the hands of his big broski. Speaking of Bolas here, unlike his god pharaoh brother, Ugin doesn't have this one defining big moment in the Magic lore. There is not this defining war and moment that he shaped alone, like the War of the Spark for his brother. They are the same in many ways, both these uber important figures whose actions intertwine throughout the entire fabric of Magic's lore itself, but instead of a grand rise and fall, Ugin steadied the course over and over and over again, meddling with everyone, everywhere, all at once. And Ug's story quietly stretches across nearly every major chapter of modern Magic lore: the Eldrazi, Tarkir, the War of the Spark, even the Dragonstorms now threatening the multiverse, all trace back in one way or another to the Spirit Dragon. But before he became the multiverse's ultimate guardian, before he started ripping sick Ghostfires or meddling with Sarkhan and time itself, Ugin was just another Elder Dragon of Dominaria. One of many sons and daughters, but arguably the weakest and smallest of the Elder Dragons. An honor that he actually shared with his twin brother, Nicol Bolas. And wow, that was a lot of intro for this very long video. It's about time we get into the first chapter. The Rise of the Spirit Dragon. Like the other OG Elder Dragons, masters of the plane of Dominaria, Ugin traces his origins also back to the Dragon, the primordial avatar of dragonkind itself. Essentially, Ugin's a nepo baby, and his dad is the concept of dragonhood throughout time and space, which is pretty awesome. It totally helps you, getting ahead in the industry, I would argue. But unlike many of his siblings, Ugin wasn't complete. He wasn't this big bad badass like Chromium Rule or Arcady Sabbath. Instead, he was half, as seen by his single name. You see, Ugin and Nicol hatched from the same egg, awakening together. They were two halves of one big whole, something blatantly obvious when you actually look at them. Like, the twins were noticeably smaller than the other Elder Dragons, and each one had one name each instead of the classic Elder Dragon double name. That's actually something that their older sister, Palladia Mors, was more than happy to mock on more than one occasion. Little bros were being little bros, that's for sure. But now, despite some bullying here and there, the brothers were pretty much completely inseparable as hatchlings. They hunted together, learned together, and spent years and years fighting as one. So before all of the grand multiverse breaking that they'd end up doing at some point, there were just two dragon brothers who were pretty happy. Until the defining moment that changed the course of Magic history itself. The two young dragons watched as a pack of hunters and dogs mercilessly slaughtered their sister, Marivia Sel. She was absolutely butchered, and they did not react the same way, as you can imagine. Bolas immediately rushed in to avenge his sister, while Ugin watched and then found his siblings to help him understand the nature of this very brutal moment. And so this one event would leave a lasting impression on both dragons, though in very different ways that would put them on different paths. Nicol's wrath and Ugin's curiosity, their most defining characteristics born from trauma. Boom, big time jump now. Are we here? Cool. The boys are now a lot older, wiser, and studying under the guiding hand of their elder dragon elder brother, Arcady Sabbath. Arcady Fire here had established himself as the Dragon Lord of a human settlement, and these humans taught Ugin and Bolas many different things about the nature of the world itself. Bolas absolutely became fascinated by politics and set his sight on becoming a male manipulator. Living amongst humans taught him how easily civilizations could be influenced, divided, and ultimately controlled. So power through deceit kind of became his own MO, but wise old Ugin found himself more drawn towards something entirely different, an elderly human philosopher named Tejuki. Tejuki here spent her life contemplating things that could not be seen. And through her teachings, her pondering and pontification and whatnot, Ugin learned that reality extended far beyond just Dominaria itself. And the idea that countless other worlds and universes could actually exist elsewhere captured his whole imagination. It became kind of his everything at this point. Now eventually, after some more time passed, the two brothers left Arcades' domain, intending to return to the mountain where the Elder Dragons had first emerged, and alongst the journey, Ugin was attacked and poisoned by human dragon hunters. Now, don't worry, he recovered, but by the time that he did, Bolas had dominated all the Dragon Hunters factions and convinced them to fight each other into the ground. Then, once the dust had settled, he effortlessly positioned himself as the new supreme ruler, and he now wanted to use Ugin to keep developing his newfound empire. And that's the first time when Ugin truly snapped. He didn't really matter to his brother. Not anymore. There was no love, no concern or care. Just a lesson really here. Bolas wanted unyielding power and dominion and would throw away or forge any necessary connection to make that happen, literally jumping into bed with the dragon hunters that had almost killed his brother. Now, of course, they weren't real, they were just a farce, a ploy for him to gain even more power. Ugin, though, didn't have a brother anymore. This one sudden revelation shattered Ugin's entire heart and soul. But if you know anything about Magic the Gathering, you know that this is pretty sick. This is a good time. This moment, this divine sadness and trauma, it's actually super cool and good for Ugin because now Ugin got to do something very few at this point in the story actually got to do in the multiverse: awaken a planeswalker spark, the method to cross the multiverse and the blind eternities themselves. Once again, that sneaky little trauma had awakened his latent power, allowing Ugin to now planeswalk away from his home plane of Dominaria. And as his first stop, he made his way over to the meditation plane. This one we're gonna hear a lot about. Now, at that moment in time, it was a mysterious realm unlike any world he had ever seen, but eventually it would become his safe haven, a strange sort of subplane connected to Dominaria, filled with vast silvery waters and shimmering portals leading towards countless other worlds. And later, as we'll see, well, there's still a little bit to go in this video, anyways, it would come to be arguably the most pivotal place in Ugin's story and the story of Magic for so many reasons. We'll get there. First, around the same time, a little thing called the Elder Dragon War consumed Dominaria, and as you could have probably guessed from the title, it was Nicol Bolas' doing as well. And so as it happened, Ugin barely participated. Instead, he spent years exploring planes throughout the multiverse, marveling at all the different civilizations, the landscapes, and magical phenomena beyond anything that his siblings or him could ever have imagined. And somewhere during these fun and silly journeys, Ugin casually experienced a magical breakthrough and just kinda, transcended the traditional 5-color mana pie and mastered colorless mana itself. Good for him, I guess. Eventually, Ugin returned home to Dominaria and was welcomed by the very side that he had feared the most, because his brother, it turns out, was up to no good at all. Arcady Sabbath and Nicol Bolas now stood on opposite sides of a devastating conflict, each commanding powerful armies of dragons and humans. Now, hoping to somehow quickly end all this nonsense, Ugin appeared, kapow, from nowhere. He revealed himself to his brother. Bolas actually was legitimately really shocked, mostly because he thought Ugin had died like ages ago. And there was some true joy and relief there, but it didn't last for very long, right? If it did, I wouldn't have so much of the video left. Anyways, Bolas was boisterous, then proudly offered to share his empire with Ugin. Thank you, so cool. In response, Ugin clapped back at his brother with probably the nastiest diss I've ever seen, because he commented on how Bolas's grand conquest was just absolutely meaningless. It was just a speck in the massive multiverse, and there was no pride to be had in this tiny empire that he had just shown his brother. Now, as you might guess, this that didn't go too well with him, because then Bolas demanded to know how his brother had suddenly gained such knowledge and power, and of course wanted to become a planeswalker himself. But despite at this point knowing a lot of things like math and history and probably communications and maybe Latin, Ugin couldn't simply teach someone how to planeswalk. As you know, that really ain't how it works, but also it doesn't really matter. Ugin wouldn't have even if he could. Which at the very least is how Bolas immediately interpreted his brother's refusal. He was certain that stupid Ugin was deliberately withholding the sacred art of skipping planes from him personally, and their bond that was so good and healthy before, broken forever again. And long after that first separation, the twins met again on the meditation plane, because it turns out that Nicol Bolas finally learned to skip and skedaddle through the blind eternities himself. Thank God, what could go wrong? Now, if you want to know how he did it, presumably because they were twins and they were both like planeswalker eligible by fate, something that you can be for 5 easy installments of $49.99 with shipping and handling, I guess. Anyways, here's what we know. There were lots of claws and fire and magic involved in a really big fight between Bolas and Ugin, and it stretched across the meditation plane and through countless other worlds as well. Throughout the fight, Ugin realized something really sad though. Hatred, it turns out, is actually kind of really powerful, and Bolas was way stronger physically than he was at this point. So instead, he made one final decision. Ugin faced through reality back to the meditation plane and allowed his brother to strike the fatal blow. He gambled his life and existence on the power of his favorite plane, and it worked. Because as Ugin's body fell into the plane's waters, the resulting surge of magical energy erupted across the meditation plane itself, booting Bolas violently back into the blind eternities and fracturing the entire meditation realm in the process. Nah, I'm just playing with you. The gamble worked, remember? The meditation plane slowly restored itself as its silvery waters rippled back to life and back to reality. They gathered together and formed a new body for Ugin. This time, reborn from the plane itself, he emerged not simply as an Elder Dragon, but as the Spirit Dragon. And upon finally having his big Jesus moment, Ugin truly found his purpose: to protect the entire multiverse from threats capable of destroying entire worlds, usually, but not limited to, by his brother, Papa Ugin of Tarkir. But first, he had to become Pop-Up to all the Elder Dragons of the mighty plane of Tarkir. Now, what can I say? I love Tarkir. It's the dragon plane, home to shamans and tribes, and of course, loads and loads and loads of dragons. All, it turns out, thanks to spirit dragon god Ugin. You see, after kind of shopping around for a little while for a new home, Ugin chose to settle there for an extended period of time, and what had kind of drawn him to Tarkir as a plane isn't actually explicitly stated in the official material, but I'm kind of assuming it had low property or income tax or something, kind of like Florida, right? And more importantly, it became the place where he conducted some of his greatest magical experiments, forever changing the world's history in the process, even if he didn't realize it yet. Or maybe he did, and he was like, I'm gonna do it anyways. Either way, using his unparalleled understanding of energy and colorless mana, Ugin created these immense elemental storms that started sweeping across Tarkir, the Dragonstorms. Now, these weren't just big hurricanes and fires or like bad weather or whatever. It technically wasn't even weather at all, but magic weather. Ooh, way more interesting. Capable also of creating life itself. From within these Dragonstorms then emerged the dragons that would eventually populate the plane, each carrying traces of Ugin's magic within them. And over many generations, these dragons then gave rise to 5 distinct broods, each adapted to a different region of Tarkir, and then, as you'll see in a little bit, eventually there's another timeline, and in this timeline, these broods are ruled by Atarka, Dromoka, Kolaghan, you probably know him from Kolaghan's Command, pretty good card, Ojutai, and Silumgar, the mighty dragon lords that came to define the entire plane. Elder dragons who were not descended of the Dragon, but the Spirit Dragon. But you know, instead of looking out for his kiddos, Ugin instead immediately had to balance the plane, because turns out his kids were kind of pretty cracked. Haste, Death Touch, big stats. Dude, these dragons were really nasty, especially back in the day, and so Ugin quietly gave the human clans tools that would help them survive. You want examples? Here we go. He taught the Jeskai the secrets of his mythical Ghostfire, allowing them to wield the strange colorless flame that only he had truly fully mastered. To the Timur, he revealed the art known as the Whisper Might, strengthening their spiritual connection to the world around them. He also granted the clans concealment magic, allowing them to hide from dragons rather than just face full extinction. Now, ironically, despite Ugin's best efforts here, he actually ended up tipping the scales a little bit too hard. Like the first of many examples where the history that Ugin tried to make work would eventually, spiral even beyond his own control. So despite his best efforts, war was inevitable on his home plane. And as a result, in Tarkir's original timeline, the dragons were actually hunted to near extinction by the 5 clans, leaving only some scattered remnants of the brutes behind. And so his children, his legacy, were slaughtered as his sister was, by humans. Luckily though, you know that I've been actually talking about some weird timeline shenanigans, and you know something's afoot here. But before the foot could be a foot, another crisis first demanded Ugin's attention. One that threatened not just Tarkir, but the entire multiverse, the Eldrazi. Oh, wait, whoa, you caught me here. This next section of the Ugin video is sponsored by Courtyard.io. Courtyard.io is an app where you can open trading card related stuff. They have Pokemon, One Piece, they have Magic the Gathering. You open these digitally, you basically can rotate if you don't like the packs or the cards that you pull, and then, cash in and basically keep rolling and rolling. Also, since I was really curious if it actually works, I did try shipping the stuff that I pulled there to me, and it came. Here is Chubby Pikachu, here is a beautiful Robin card, and the best one, the magic packs. You don't get magic cards, you roll for magic packs. I got a really cool Tempest booster pack, which I'm excited to open up. There is a Commander Masters, very excited, and the best one I pulled, look at this, this is better than crack. We have a Final Fantasy English Collector booster, so if you're curious and you just want to try it out, link is in the description below, and you can use my code OHARA10 as well. Otherwise, back to the video. Ugin casually contains all the Eldrazi. Alright, switching gears here a little bit, somewhere during his travels across the multiverse, or better yet, I should say in between the different universes, within the blind eternities themselves, Ugin encountered something unlike anything he had ever studied or seen anywhere before. The Eldrazi. Gigantic, incomprehensible titan beings who consumed entire planes the way that I consume tacos on a Tuesday night, just gobbling them up for a purpose that Ugin couldn't understand but at least knew was orderly. Only that, no, it wasn't. They needed to be stopped by Ugin, he decided, because apparently he now got to determine what was actually natural. Now this part in the story, I personally gotta say, especially with everything else that's gonna come up, I don't quite get, honestly. It's kind of very unlike him, but hey man, he probably had a good reason, or that was a learning moment for him. Either way, together he formed a team. A super team of 3! The 3! Ugin, the spirit dragon, at the lead of course, the ancient vampire planeswalker Sorin Markov at his side, who I only recently learned did actually have a little bit of a part to play in all of this, and backing the two up was the lithomancer Nahiri, who was actually really good with metal and rocks, and I think she's Stoneforge Mystic, and I really like that card, so go Nahiri! Anyways, over time, Ugin came to understand that Emrakul, Kozilek, and Ulamog weren't simply these gigantic monsters rampaging across worlds. Turns out they were more cosmic entities whose true forms were so incomprehensible that they existed beyond the blind eternities, with only really portions of their beings manifesting on an individual plane in a physical manner. And while many probably would have preferred it to just have the Eldrazi be destroyed outright, Ugin argued against it because, he isn't about all that murder life. Whether the Eldrazi acted as cosmic predators, natural recyclers of old worlds, or fulfilled some other ancient but unknown role entirely, Ugin believed that caution was the wiser path here. But then still kind of decided it was also his place to intervene anyways. I guess he's not always neutral. He tries to keep the multiverse alive after all. So they ended up luring the Eldrazi to Nahiri's home plane of Zendikar and imprisoned them beneath the plane using an enormous network of magical hedrons that took like 40 years, I'm not kidding you, to build. Teamwork, of course, was key here. Nahiri shaped the stone formations. Sorin helped lure and sap the Eldrazi of their strength like a good little vampire lord. And Ugin's knowledge and mastery of mana helped seal all of them away in a chamber that he built, known as the Eye of Ugin. Might have heard of it, pretty good card. And there, they stayed in a prison that would hold them for roughly 6,000 years. Ugin had won through peace, I guess, entertainment, but his brother caught wind of this and was like, ooh la la, let me get a piece of that action, please. Ugin-Sama, brotherly love is war. Nicol Bolas returned, searched for a way to regain the unimaginable power that he had lost after the Mending. Now, the Mending was a story moment that turned the old planeswalkers like Liliana, Ugin, and Bolas into much weaker planeswalkers. Ugin, of course, knew way better than almost everyone what his brother was actually capable of and knew that he'd go to some crazy extents to secure that old godlike power of his. You know, especially now that other people didn't have it, it looked even sweeter. So he eventually began working with another ancient planeswalker, one that maybe you haven't heard of, Azor the Sphinx, the multiversal judge of order, founder of the original guild pact of Ravnica, and low-key probably the inspiration for all Sphinxes across the multiverse in Magic altogether. And together, the Winged Kitty Man and the Winged Spirit Dragon Hippie devised an extraordinary plot to seal away his brother Bolas forever. You see, my dear viewer, hidden within the plane of Ixalan, a plane of dinosaurs, cool, mermaids, nice, dinosaurs, and pirates and dinosaurs, is a device known as the Immortal Sun. A device that was forged by Azor, who sacrificed his own Planeswalker Spark so that the device could be capable of trapping Planeswalkers and preventing them from escaping the plane. So there, Azor waited, guarding their trap, waiting for Ugin to signal its activation and sealing Bolas on Ixalan. And, well, before that happened, Bolas learned of that plan and squared up with his brother on Tarkir, brought that fight to the opposing team's court, basically. Kind of like it. I respected Bolas. I respect the hustle here. Now, my favorite fun fact about this that I weave into all my videos that have this part in is that the clash between Bolas and Ugin is actually depicted on the card Crux of Fate. So, the two brothers once again duked it out. Their fight clashed above the skies, scarring the landscape and causing wild and true chaos in the entire world. Bolas, once again, not only overwhelmed his brother physically, whooping him, but while all of that was going on, Bolas forced his way into Ugin's mind, extracting hidden knowledge of the Eldrazi prison on Zendikar. And after learning the Eldrazi's whereabouts, he struck his brother down at long last. Ugin's lifeless body crashed into Tarkir, leaving behind the immense skeletal remains that would later become known as the Crucible of the Spirit Dragon. Nicol Bolas departed, believing that he had finally, this time for sure, removed the only dragon who truly understood him. And just like that, Ugin's story ended. Ugin's Bogus journey. What's that? Whoa! Must be time to talk about the time stuff now. Alright, yeah, that's right. Old Ugin was dead, but not gone. Can only cast one side of that card. He was the Spirit Dragon, and his spirit, well, that one easily endured. Fate would now be reforged, and he would return. How exactly did this work? I don't know. Even Ugin himself doesn't really know, it turns out, but what happens is absolutely gnarly and easily one of the most complicated and cool moments in the history of Magic the Gathering. What does seem to be clear is that his consciousness remained bound to the plane of Tarkir, searching for an answer in someone who really loves dragons. Surely a dragon lover would do anything to bring back Ugin, the spirit dragon, and luckily there was one guy like that. the biggest dragon fan out there. He knows all of their moves, he knows all their favorite snacks. He read that one dragon book that you get at the book fair at least like 10 times over. Sarkhan Vol. From childhood on, Sarkhan here had always heard whispers that no one else could perceive seemingly, but they were not just whispers or, him not being on his meds, they were Ugin, whispering sweet nothings and super indirect orders to please work and bring him back to life. So over the years, the spirit dragon, kind of like Voldemort with Quirrell, quietly nudged Sarkhan towards the location of his death, later known as the Crucible of the Spirit Dragon, we talked about this, convincing Sarkhan that he was the only person capable of changing what had happened on Tarkir. So when Sarkhan finally reached the Crucible of the Spirit Dragon, he found Ugin's enormous skeleton exactly where Nicol Bolas had left it, and Sarkhan worked for Bolas, but his actions conveniently were paved by Ugin. Now, one such event was, for example, during a battle on Zendikar in the Eye of Ugin, which ended with Sarkhan stealing a chunk of the Hedron network and claiming it for himself, carrying the Hedron back to Tarkir and placing it within the dragon's remains. Sarkhan ended up in the Crucible at long last, and after a big clash, he was blasted back in time. More than 1,000 years, it turns out, into Tarkir's past, he wandered around and eventually realized that he was sent back to when Bolas cut down Ugin first. He witnessed history itself unfold. Again, the brothers fought, Bolas delivered the same devastating blow, but this time, one big detail changed. Before Ugin's spark could fully fade, Sarkhan intervened, taking action instead of seeking guidance as he always had. He used the Hedron that he'd stolen from the Eye of Ugin to conveniently preserve Ugin's life. Just long enough for some powerful draconic elder dragon magic to begin healing him inside of a cocoon of crystallized energy. Once again, believing his brother was mortally wounded, Nicol Bolas departed without realizing that history itself had in this moment been fully altered. Afterwards, Sarkhan created the Crucible, a Hedron network designed to tether Ugin to Tarkir and keep him safe as he healed there. And that single act rewrote Tarkir's entire fate. You see, in the original timeline, the dragons gradually disappeared, hunted nearly to extinction by the 5 clans. In the new timeline though, Ugin survived. His Dragonstorms continued to sweep across the plane, allowing dragonkind to flourish instead, paving way for the Dragon Lords of Tarkir. However, even after history had now fully been rewritten, Ugin remained stuck in his cocoon while his body continued to heal, one day emerging as a beautiful butterfly. His good old pal Sorin Markov eventually traveled to Tarkir and helped awaken Ugin fully, and after emerging from the cocoon, Ugin finally returned fully to the multiverse as a living planeswalker once again. Just in time, actually, to chastise Sorin, who freed him, Sorin came in and was pretty much like, hey man, the Eldrazi, they got out, don't know how that happened, what do you want to do about that? And Ugin said that, we're gonna need Nahiri again, but Sorin was really dodgy about that proposal. So Ugin said, get her, go there, solve problem, I'll meet you on Zendikar. And somewhere before he went to Zendikar, he then touched base with Sarkhan. Ugin was studying the timeline, completely unaware of what had happened in the old timeline during the events of Tarkir, and Ugin knew about everything before the clash with Bolas and his death, but not the manipulating part of Sarkhan. That was kind of also his idea, only that he didn't remember it. And so he actually proposed that Sarkhan was now a living time paradox, and Sarkhan was pretty chill with that and just left. Nobody listens to Ugin. Alright, so genuinely, I think that this is maybe one of the funniest parts of Ugin's entire lore, because you'd think that the Planeswalkers would listen to him because he knows kind of a lot. But alas, they do not, even when they literally just asked him for advice. Jace Beleren sought out Ugin's guidance in regard to, the freed Eldrazi problem that they have. Jace was low-key responsible for it as well and felt obligated to solve it alongside the Planeswalkers who would eventually form the Gatewatch. And the Spirit Dragon made his position pretty abundantly clear, I think. The Eldrazi should not be destroyed. Their role within the multiverse remained unknown. They have a purpose, probably, and acting without understanding the consequences of killing these massive titanic concepts could prove disastrous. And instead, Ugin urged caution and encouraged Jace to just restore the prison if at all possible. And Jace just promptly killed the Eldrazi alongside the Gatewatch. Chandra Nalaar, Flame Baddie, led to the ultimate erasure of the Eldrazi Titans on Zendikar, which is a little bit complicated. We talked about this before because, like, they were only partially in Zendikar, right? We talked about how they only touch certain parts of their existence into the physical realm. I personally am really fuzzy on if they are really dead or not. You know, it's Magic. I feel like they'll probably bring them back. So is a lot of the community, by the way. It's very complicated, but, you know, you should check out my Eldrazi video for more infos on that. Ugin, either way, was not very happy about this regardless, because he truly believed that removing such ancient, fundamental beings of existence without even understanding their real purpose could have consequences that no one had yet comprehended. But, like, why even ask Ugin what we should do when then you're not gonna listen to him? Like, seriously, maybe they'll listen the next time a nigh invincible being threatens the multiverse itself? Oh no. The War of the Spark, aka the salty runback of Elder Dragon Planeswalkers. Bah, shocker, the threat finally arrived. None other than big Nicol Bolas himself. Pew pew! As Bolas maneuvered the multiverse towards the events that would then become the War of the Spark, Ugin quietly began assembling a counter-strategy. You know, because no one listens to him ever, it seems, so he must do everything himself. He already knew that Bolas was planning on becoming an old-style walker somehow, some way, and he needed another team. Ugin, Jace Beleren, Second Chance Buddy, Niv Mizzet, Sarkhan Vol, Gideon Jura, Chandra Nalaar, Nissa Ravane, and a lot of others, they formed the team that I dub Ugin's really powerful band of planeswalkers that are hellbent on destroying Nicol Bolas once and for all so that all the multiverse is finally safe. I think that name is gonna stick. So, what actually happened here, Manu? Well, Ugin teamed up with his undercover buddy Sarkhan to keep tabs on Bolas. Nicol Bolas had conquered the meditation realm at this point, but Sarkhan had helped Ugin tap back into the plane itself, secretly given Ugin control over a special secret plane that he missed oh so dearly. Now, with this newfound access, Ugin could use the Spirit Gem, an artifact between Bolas's horns, to spy on him and uncover his secret schemes. And during all of this, one of Ugin's most important allies was, ironically, Jace Beleren. Although the two hadn't always agreed, and by that I mean Jace had not listened to him, especially regarding the entire Eldrazi thing, Ugin still trusted Jace's ability to think beyond immediate battles. Mind Sculptor things, right? He was an elite thinker after all, or so one would think, but apparently not. Jace is messing up a lot. And that thinking then helped reveal actually a crucial piece of Bolas's long-term plan, unclear even to Ugin. Then yet another very unlikely ally was the powerful dragon Niv Mizzet, leader of the Izzet Guild of Ravnica. He's also actually next in line to take over as lead guitarist for King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, but he actually wants to change the band name to Niv Mizzet and the Dragon Who's Sick with It. Anyways, this is for another video. Recognizing that this dragon possessed both incredible intelligence and also a willingness to shoulder some truly impossible burdens, Ugin worked behind the scenes quietly and very determinedly to ensure that Niv Mizzet could eventually be reborn as a living guild pact. Now, this was important, in case you're wondering, because the Guild Pact was essentially the big boss in charge of the entire plane of Ravnica, the place that Bolas focused on harvesting Planeswalker sparks through a massive ritual known as the Elder Spell. Niv Mizzet was very powerful, and by ensuring that he'd become the next Guild Pact and preserving his consciousness in a magical device, they could actually catch Bolas off guard here potentially. The last step that they needed for this plan was securing a weapon that could actually physically harm Bolas, something that Ugin sent no one else but Sarkhan to do, and Sarkhan claimed the spear of the Amonkhet god Hazoret. Now, if you don't know, Hazoret was a god working for Bolas on the plane of Amonkhet, a plane that Bolas claimed to build his army up completely, and his spear was created by the evil Elder Dragon and thus could actually also harm the evil Elder Dragon. So Sarkhan secured it, bringing it back to Ravnica. Now, when the War of the Spark finally fully erupted, Nicol Bolas appeared to have achieved complete, utter victory. Planeswalkers from all across the multiverse had been lured here to Ravnica, trapped by the very device created to seal Bolas away by Ugin, the Immortal Sun. Remember that from earlier? From the plane with the dinosaurs and the pirates and the dinosaurs and the merfolk and yeah, you get it. Alright. The Elder Spell then harvested sparks from countless victims, and Bolas's army, the Dread Horde, overwhelmed the city's defenders. Bolas had won. Not. Liliana Vess, the planeswalker that Bolas had manipulated into leading his army, turned against Bolas and seized control of the Dread Horde. After being revived, Niv Mizzet was reborn as the Living Guild Pact, and he was equipped with the magical spear capable of harming Bolas, and the combined resistance of pretty much every single planeswalker out there then finally stripped Bolas of the overwhelming power he was so close to securing, but had failed ultimately to get. Instead, Bolas was struck down, not by Ugin, but by one of his own men, the god Bontu, who chomped into him and unleashed all the sparks that Bolas consumed, including his own innate spark too. Shout out to Bontu, I guess. So Ugin finally conquered his brother. A truly tragic victory. Ugin and Bolas, twins hatched from the same egg who had shared the same traumatic stories, went down incredibly different paths. But ultimately, the one obsessed with domination was slain by his peacekeeping brother. Order and knowledge conquered all, and Ugin had now to bear that weight. He had actually killed his brother. Or, at the very least, that's what most believed. After the Great Clash on Ravnica, many just assumed that the Elder Dragon Nicol Bolas was just dead and gone forever, but that wasn't entirely true. After all, he was Ugin's brother, and death is something that can be very easily manipulated if you're an Elder Dragon, it seems. Ugin needed to ensure Bolas was never summoned, revived, or anything beyond his control, kind of like the stuff that he pulled off himself after being killed. So rather than executing Bolas, Ugin helped orchestrate the imprisonment of his twin. Publicly, Nicol Bolas was just considered dead and gone, but with the assistance of some mind sculpting from Jace, Ugin flew Bolas to the Meditation Realm, the site of their very first battle. And there, Bolas was then stripped of his true name and his titles and left unable to leave the plane at all, magically sealed away by Ugin's own powers. Now, if you're wondering why that matters, well, his name was stripped so he could never be summoned by anyone. As far as the multiverse was concerned, there just was no Nicol Bolas. People knew of his name and tale, but so long as Nicol Bolas didn't, he couldn't act or tap into his power. But he wasn't alone. No. Instead, Ugin decided to stay. Kind of had to. So he sealed off the Meditation Realm from the rest of the multiverse and kept watch over his brother for the rest of time. He sat with him, kept him sealed, and the two twins were once again together as one at last. It's a remarkably bittersweet ending to one of Magic's oldest rivalries. Thousands upon thousands of years earlier, Ugin and Bolas had hatched from that one egg, hunted together, learned together, and once saw each other as equals and part of a bigger whole. And now it was once again kind of the way it began. No armies, no powers, no ambitions, just two ancient dragons with only each other. Psych! We're not done yet. He's back. The Dragonstorms RAGE. Peace, however, never lasts long in the Magic multiverse. Cards need to be sold, stories need to continue, and in the aftermath of the Phyrexian invasion of the multiverse, the fabric of reality itself had been severely damaged. The magical omen paths that had been left behind by Realmbreaker by its roots now started connecting planes that had once been completely isolated, and across Tarkir, the Dragonstorms had grown increasingly unstable. These weren't simply the storms that Ugin had once used to birth dragons, they had now become these unpredictable magical phenomena capable of threatening the entire plane, going crazy with Ugin's absence from the entire multiverse. They were popping up like kinda everywhere due to the connected nature of the planes through the Omen Pass at this point. Jace Beleren had disappeared following the Phyrexian invasion, pursuing his own plan to protect the future of the multiverse, and alongside Vraskara and the mysterious child Lute, Jace had come to believe that the wounds left behind by Realmbreaker and the Omen Paths required a solution far greater than simply reacting to each new catastrophe. And his search eventually led him back to Tarkir, back to the meditation realm, back to Ugin. The Spirit Gem and the Meditation Plane were very mysterious, but apparently Lute knew that they were brokenly overpowered, and Jace learned that he could resculpt the multiverse, undoing the Phyrexian invasion and the Omen Pass ever happening. But from Ugin's perspective, there was a much more immediate problem here. Nicol Bolas. He needed to remain sealed, and the only way to do that was the Spirit Gem in the Meditation Realm under his control. Meanwhile, Elspeth Tyrell and Narset also managed to somehow enter the Meditation Realm, pleading for Ugin's return to stop the Dragonstorms destroying the entire multiverse. Basically, it was a total mess, and this mess was the perfect situation to release Nicol Bolas. Now, without diving too deeply into every single plot beat here, the climax of Tarkir Dragonstorm's story isn't simply another battle between heroes and villains on a fun plane with dragons. No. I don't know how, but Wizards somehow often manages to completely undersell the story impact of some of their sets. At its core, Tarkir Dragonstorm was a conflict between fundamentally different visions for the future of the multiverse. Jace is willing to take extraordinary risks if it means repairing the multiverse. Others are fighting to preserve Tarkir itself, and our man Ugin is just refusing to compromise on the one lesson that his impossibly long life has taught him at this point. Some dangers are simply too great to gamble with. But then Elspeth, dear Elspeth, who otherwise has been so good, accidentally spoke Bolas's name, giving him power again, and while an immense clash took place, Jace snuck and grabbed the Spirit Gem and took control over the Meditation Realm. But he was just a human, not an Elder Dragon, and his body, of course, couldn't handle it. The realm, once again, shattered, sending everything out, including Ugin and Bolas. The two were now once again out somewhere in the multiverse, surely scheming again. Bolas is likely preparing another big conquest that we'll get at some point, and Ugin is preparing to stop it. Such was the fate of these two Elder Dragons for their entire life. Bolas is maybe still the greatest threat to Magic, and there's a reason that Ugin had to spend so much time trying to defeat and keep him at bay. And if you want to learn all about the evil twin himself, you can check out his video right here where I dig into way more of his story. Otherwise, Jesus Christ, what a long video. I can't believe you sat through this with me. If you enjoyed this video, just leave me a like or comment, even more preferably what you want to see next after we're done with Dragon Month, and I hopefully will see you in the next video. Until then, have a wonderful week.